Welcome to Source One Saturday Night Mashup. My name is Nico Lagan. My co-host, Jason Lavigne, and our guests tonight are Leighton Grey, Katie Pasitney, that's going to be joining us in about 15 minutes, and Dr. Pelech. We are going to be talking about one of the topics that's probably everywhere right now, the BC Ostriches. Who hasn't heard about them, right? Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
So we normally start by a small intro, and nobody can do an intro better than yourselves. I'm kind of lazy too, so I will do a small round table just to introduce yourself. Stephen, if you want to go first.
Sure. I'm a professor at the Department of Medicine at the University of British Columbia, where I've been on faculty for about 38 years. I'm also a co-founder of two biotech companies, one of which produces antibodies, actually. And I'm also the vice president and co-chair of the Scientific and Medical Advisory Committee of the Canadian Citizens Care Alliance.
Mr. Leighton Grey?
Yes, so I'm an Alberta lawyer, constitutional lawyer. I prosecuted several cases, high-profile cases involving COVID-19. I'm still doing that, actually, prosecuting a national class action on behalf of the unvaccinated for harms that they suffered. And I'm the creator and host of the Grey Matter podcast, which is now over 350 episodes. And so I spent a lot of time doing that and just enjoying appearing on shows like this, talking to wise people and having great conversations.
I don't know about the wise part, but we appreciate the sucking up.
You're a wise guy. You're a wise guy. You're a wise guy, Nico.
Jason.
Yeah, I'm Jason Lavigne. I'm the host of the Lavigne Show. I am honored to be part of a group that's been called Wise. I'm the father of two, the husband of one, and I am absolutely looking into the bottom of this story, trying to figure out what's really going on, and could be more pleased that Dr. Pelech, I know I screwed that up, and Katie will be joining us today so we can get some more of this truth and share with everybody. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Unlike Jason, I'm happy you're here too, Leighton, by the way. He didn't want to talk about you, but I'll say it. I'm happy you're here.
He's in the
I'm
shadows
Nico Lagan. I'm the host of The Political Orphans. I run this show with Jason. I also record on Wednesdays with David Creighton, the Conservative Corner, and I just restarted my own podcast alone that is Unwoken with Nico Lagan. I'm political commentator, professional asshole, and yeah, that's what I do. Hold on, I'm gonna try to steal yours because that was pretty good. Father of one, husband of one. It doesn't sound as good. It really does not sound as good. Yours sounded way better. So until we're gonna wait for Katie to show up, but I want to ask you guys what's your opinion, like personal opinion. If I just throw it out there, when you think BC ostriches, what comes to mind?
Well, I guess I can start off.
Yes.
I mean, this case is far beyond the fate of these ostriches. It actually has an impact on farming in general. There's a lot of relationship with Bill C-293, which is really where we're adopting these standards and essentially rules that are being set by international organizations like the World Health Organization, and the World Organization for Animal Health. And so this is a bit problematic. I think it's been very revealing to me personally, because I had a lot more confidence in the expertise that our government agencies have in handling these kind of matters. And really, this is just disintegrated for me. I've been an expert witness for the Universal Ostrich Farm, and I've been involved in going through all the cases and seeing the expertise and really the arguments that have been presented and rationale by the experts for the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And I found them extremely wanting. And so this is very disconcerting to me. And I'm hoping that really reason and science will prevail. And at least at some point, the truth will emerge, but I hope it's not too late for the ostriches.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Leighton?
Well, honestly, I'm not a medical man. I'm a lawyer, and so I tend to see cases like this, issues like this, through through a legal lens. And what I see, um, sort of not only at the microcosmic level, but also the macrocosmic level, is this being yet another assault on private property. So these birds essentially are owned; they are property. They are livestock, and so we're seeing this is yet another example. Two other examples that are very much in the news these days. One is in British Columbia, and this is the UNDRIP situation, where a court essentially gave parts of Richmond, which included golf courses and other land that is legally titled, to Indians, and this is through the auspices of UNDRIP. And this ties into Dr. Pelech's comment about these international agencies and treaties really reconfiguring the Canadian Constitution and Canadian law. Another example that we're seeing right now, which is very, very topical, especially in places like Alberta, is gun confiscation, which is yet another attack on private property. Because when you think, people don't think of it in these terms, but what is a firearm? It is fundamentally, legally, it's a species of private property, and the government is saying, "Oh no, you can't own that." And the interesting thing about all of this is that UNDRIP came into Canadian law because of the federal government. My understanding is that it's the federal government, it's a federal food inspection agency that's involved in the ostrich case, and obviously it's the federal government that's involved in gun confiscation. And the backdrop of this is under Section 9213 of the Canadian Constitution. Private property and civil rights are under provincial jurisdiction. And so I see this not only as a really dreadful case of government overreach, not only on a health level, but also on a private property level. Because if these people want to raise ostriches, and if they're doing it responsibly, I don't see that the federal government has any right to come in there and essentially destroy private property under the auspices of health. And this is really just another example, very similar to what was done during COVID, where all of our fundamental civil liberties and human rights were trumped and essentially violated throughout the country under the auspices of, this is necessary, this is an emergent situation, an existential crisis. And so in order to preserve the greater good, none of you have the right to go to church or go to school or congregate anywhere. And so I really see this as in the broader context, legally, as an assault upon individual rights and freedoms, and also an attempt by this federal government to reconfigure Canadian Confederation and make this central government in Ottawa, which is not a national government, the sole lawmaking power in Canada. And I believe that is their goal. They're trying to obviate the provinces and they make them irrelevant. And it's a real pity that the provincial government in BC is not standing up for these people. So that's kind of my sort of 10,000 foot view of what's going on with the ostriches.
And I concur a lot with both of our guests here tonight. And when Stephen Pelech said this is similar to the Bill 293, I said the same thing earlier this week. This is a dry run. And what I'm seeing here is a test of all of our institutions, whether it comes to agriculture, where they're saying the avian flu is involved, we've got to stamp these out. Whether it comes to international agreements, it comes to medical for humans, because they're saying this could be a threat to humans as well. It comes to our policing, because our policing are definitely acting in a way that we don't like, and a little bit rough around the collar for sure, all the way to our politicians out in Ottawa. Like, why are they not speaking up? So, and media, let's not forget media, because they've run in the narrative again. They're ignoring the science. I saw an article that came out with the CTV Friday, basically boasting that they had all the information, but they didn't bring up anything that Dr. Pelech brought up. Didn't bring up the burnout rate, because there's over 9 months now, these birds haven't been sick. So I see this as a huge test of our entire institution, and it's a litmus test, institutions, plural, and it's a litmus test on what Canadians are going to be putting up with here. And I'm not surprised to see that there's a camp. There are people that are protesting, watching, recording, sharing, more and more people are going there to get the information out because media is failing us. Politicians are failing us. And I don't understand what the courts are doing on this one too. So let's add courts to that list of institutions that are failing us on this particular issue. With the Supreme Court decision just around the corner, the deadline for the respondents was Friday. They got 2 days for the applicants. We would expect some movement on this pretty quick because it's an expedited application. So I think every single piece of our democracy is being tested on this particular issue. Nothing's left to be wondering whether or not it's going to be for the people or not. I think it's pretty clear. And this does feel like the convoy all over again. All of our rights were being tested, property rights, autonomy rights, medical rights, decisions, our body, and working, whether or not we can work. And this is something else that I didn't bring up about this particular issue. She's going to be losing her entire business, this family here. So Katie and Karen and David, this is their business, their livelihood, and they're looking at having that shut down. So I think the entire system, all our institutions are being tested on this one, maybe on purpose, and to see what we'll put up with. Nico?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to take it from a 10,000 foot view to, because I'm a massive conspiracy theorist, so I have my views on what's actually happening. I don't have all the proof that I need to actually prove it, but no matter how you look at this, to me, it's super simple. Why are they not testing the bird? Why are they not testing the birds? Why are they not shipping them to the US when people are ready to pay for it? Why are we not testing to see if they have indeed developed natural immunity? Just today, I was recording with Ted Kunz from Vaccine Choice Canada about the first death in a generation about of a measles case in Alberta. That was a premature baby that was born that just died literally this week of measles in Alberta. Yet, if you listen to what they're saying, they don't address any of the questions whatsoever, and they try to make it sound like the only way to protect yourself nowadays against a virus, let's say measles, is the vaccine. Yet the vaccine affects, if you look at the efficiency of the vaccine, is 10 to 15 years. Natural immunity, lifetime. It seems like as soon as I saw the ostriches, it's like, are they trying to tell us, are they trying to kind of erase the fact that natural immunity is possible? That's what I've been thinking from the get-go when I look at the ostriches. If they have natural immunity, is that why they want to get rid of them? That's the question that I have from the beginning, because it seems since COVID, that's all they want us to believe, that there is no way that a human being that is healthy can develop natural immunity with a strong immune system. And this is the lie that they've been selling us for 5 years. And they continue to do it. And that's what I see about the ostriches. This is what I see about the case of measles in Alberta. And it kind of makes me wonder, and I have kind of a two-ended question for both Leighton and Stephen when it comes to this, because I know for a fact, I have a 2.5 months old right now, and it's insane how much they push vaccines. It's absolutely insane how they're pushing it. Oh, he needs to get his vaccine. He needs to get this. And I'm like, yeah, my wife and I both agree that it ain't going to happen. So there's nothing you can tell us that's going to make that a reality. But one thing that I'm realizing through COVID, and especially too what happened with the Freedom Convoy, is I have no faith, zero faith in doctors anymore. I have zero faith in our government. I don't trust them whatsoever. If you did not stand up during COVID, or you didn't fight the system with me during that time, I have very much troubles to actually trust people now. And is that something, that's the question that I have for both you guys as a doctor and a lawyer. Is that something that you're seeing? Are you seeing the vast majority or a lot of Canadians that are losing faith in our medical system and our government, the way that they're governing us?
Dr. Pelech?
Well, I think there's a cognitive dissonance happening. I think those that are critical thinkers that have gone out and tried to get as much information as they can collect based on some of these crises like COVID-19 and now the H5N1, in at least the poultry setting, in commercial farms, if they go out and they get the information, I think many people are wondering, like, what's going on here? Why aren't we getting this information from our mainstream media? And you're right. I think there's been a great deal of erosion of trust in the institutions, and they have failed the public in this regard. At least they should be transparent, and they should be able to justify whatever actions that they take. And I think this is quite serious, because there is this polarization happening. We know that it takes a very small number of people to change things. And we've seen this, for example, I think in our society with sort of the woke agenda. And we kind of have to counter this. We have to come back with reason and with rationality, again, with humility, and hopefully try to change things. And this is why this case to me is so important. And I've been willing to be involved in helping the farm.
And Leighton, your book just came out. Chapter 7 is about the power of propaganda. And actually, it was really timely. The power of propaganda is your chapter 7 here, and I think this is kind of exactly what we're doing here.
Well, there's another chapter in the book called Demoralization, which is, and one of the steps to demoralization, if you're familiar with the work of Yuri Bezmenov, is exactly what Nico was talking about and what Dr. Pelech was talking about, and that is we have been in the West a trust-based society. And so, for example, in the medical context, there has been a trust between doctor and patient, and there's patient-doctor confidentiality that has been enshrined in our law in our society for a very long time. And patients have had to be able to trust that the doctor was giving them the best and most truthful and accurate information that they could possibly get. Same thing in the legal context. When I get a client in the office, they have an expectation that I'm going to behave ethically, that I'm going to keep everything that they tell me privileged, that I'm going to follow instructions. And there's a lot of trust involved in that. And in fact, there's trust everywhere you look in our society. Trust is a key factor. And what Bezmenov talks about is it's this Marxist concept of destruction of that trust, because that gets down to the foundations, the roots of a society, the sort of the pillars that hold everything up. And when you destroy that trust, you destroy all of the fruits of those roots. Everything that you basically poison the tree, and so this is really vitally important. And the other thing, talking about loss of trust in medicine and science generally, that reminded me of something that Dr. Jay Bhattacharya said, who is now the head of the NIH. I had the great pleasure to get to know Jay when he was the expert witness in the Ingram case, which was the constitutional challenge to lockdowns during COVID. And one of the things he said in his testimony during that case is always stayed with me. And he said, maybe the greatest damage that was going to come out of COVID was the loss of trust and confidence in science and medicine. Because he said, going into COVID, they tracked it, and more than 90% of people would trust the medical information, what public health would tell them. But coming out of COVID, the numbers now are below 50%. And so what Jay said, if we ever got a virus that was as communicable as Omicron, but as dangerous as something as Ebola, more than half the population wouldn't believe the danger. They wouldn't trust what they were being told and get the vaccine. And so, of course, this sort of has ripple effects throughout society. So this idea of trust, we don't talk about it enough, but when you start to think about it, it's hugely important. Trust is really everywhere throughout society, whether it's in our schools, in our universities, medical situations, lawyers, truck drivers, right? You got to trust that guy driving that big rig down the road actually has a license to operate it and knows what he's doing. So we're seeing the erosion of that trust. Of course, maybe the biggest one is the loss of trust in media and government. Maybe that's the one that hits home even the most, especially in Canada. But I saw that your other guest had just come on while I was talking. So I'll be quiet now. I'll give it back to the host.
She left because of you. She's like, oh hell no, that talks way too much.
Well, let's go ahead and welcome Katie.
Yep.
Yeah,
Katie.
Katie, we were just talking about trust in the institutions, and you are definitely somebody who's familiar with this now. So let's go ahead and say hello to Katie.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Katie.
As you can tell, I'm hiding in my car. Talk about trust. We're hiding in vehicles. We have drones that are following us everywhere, listening to everything we say. Trust. There's no going back on this, I don't think, for the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. I started my position really clear about Canadian Food Inspection Agency is a very important organization within Canada, and how we need to repair the eroded trust between Canadians and this organization. But after talking to so many farmers back from 2007, I just don't see that ever really getting rebuilt. I see that we're going to have to see the total collapse of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, or at least it's separated into better segments, because I don't think the Canadian Food Inspection Agency should be handling our farmers. And we should have a new outbreak response. We need a new team. We need a new platform. We need a new vision. We need a new face. And we need something where Canadians can start fresh again and start to believe. Because right now, everybody feels attacked. And we're back to that shoot, shovel, shut up stage as a farmer. And we're putting Canadians more at risk now than ever. Because if we actually have something that's a viral concern or a bacterial concern or something like that, we're not going to know about it, because we don't have transparency, that honesty between the organization and the farmers. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency here, what we've learned in the last 4 days, and after my mom and I being arrested last week, they're hiding behind yellow police tape, and they're hiding behind badges of good men, and they're hiding behind our Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and their communication as so off with even these officers, that these officers, if there was a real viral threat, which there isn't here, and that's been made clear by their actions, that this is about saving their face, not protecting anybody, that all of these officers would have been put at risk. All of these officers, all of their families, the community that they're driving to and from, every family that's at the hotels that they're staying in, there would be the biggest outbreak you'd ever seen, because there is a lack of communication and the proper outbreak response. So that arrest was, we were baited into the back of the pens. I'm sure everybody maybe knows about that. We were told that we could do the humane action of feeding our animals, because that's all we wanted to do, was keep our animals in a routine, keep them calm, keep them with the people that they've been with for 35 years, and keep them in a routine of calmness while all this action was going around them. And we got the okay that we could feed our animals. And then they caught us in the back pens so that nobody could witness it, nobody could film it, nobody could do anything. And it's been eye-opening, not just for us, but it's on a world level. The world is watching. The world's going to continue to watch. And that's what I said today to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, because they're watching everything we do. There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide anymore. And someone's going to have to come clean here, and it's not the farmers.
Could you go ahead and give us an update from today? Because you mentioned some events happened. You had to speak to the liaison. And you also, video last night came out about one of the birds that had a tendon issue and not looking so well right now.
Yeah. So our hen, her name is Spirit. And there's so much speculation. People are like, did you just name her Spirit? We're like, no, her name is actually Spirit. And we just healed her. So she went through about a month of recovery a couple months ago. And she was walking and doing great. And she was always the first one at the feed pails and pecking to say hello. And the RCMP drones came in, and again, with no knowledge of the animal on how the ostriches act, they flew their drones very low over our farm, putting all of our ostriches into a panic. And when that happened, we were screaming at them from inside the pens to please stop. And they had all of our birds hitting fences, pinging off fences, and Spirit flipped over the fence twice because she was scared. And so we had her taken care of. We had given her anti-inflammatories, and while we were in the pens with her. But after we were arrested and we were served 3 search warrants, and they took full custody of our animals and custody over the property. They were not willing to communicate with us. So that hen never got anti-inflammatories or her regular treatment for about 2 to 3 days. We had to go through police liaisons. The police liaisons would then talk to the RCMP, and the RCMP, they were relaying information to Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which is on site. So they were not even willing to just talk to us at the fence. And again, that's what we said. It's a very cowardly act, because why would you not come talk to us and let us know what's happening with her, take our advice of our treatment and what she needed. And so what had happened was she went about 2 to 3 days with no treatment. And then we got told that the only way we could communicate with Canadian Food Inspection Agency was by email. So we started emails. Then we told them that she needed to be given electrolytes. And those electrolytes were very, very critical to her survival because she was not doing well. When we were asking the Canadian Food Inspection Agency for proof of her health and how she was doing, they were not being transparent. They wouldn't show us a video. They wouldn't show us a picture. And we even just begged, please just let us go in, just check on her. We don't need phones. We don't need anything in there. Just let us go do our job. And they wouldn't let us in there. So they kept telling us that they were taking these electrolytes to her. And we questioned whether or not they were giving them to her. So we started holding up signs, and we made them public, that we were asking them of proof of her health and where these electrolytes were going, and just to show us to be transparent with us. And then we received an email that she was not doing well and she was at the end of her life. Then to come out that we have amazing supporters here that are just all being independent journalists and taking pictures and video footage and taking it upon themselves to watch them, hold them accountable for what they're doing. And in doing so, we caught footage that they've been taking those electrolytes, and they went to an area where the hen wasn't even in, and they were going behind a bush, and they were dumping out the electrolytes for our hen, and they weren't tubing her. They were not giving her these electrolytes. Yesterday, somebody went in with a drone, which they have a no-fly zone right now. And that drone captured an image of Spirit at her last part of her life, throwing her head back and dying. And she was alone. And that was a very, very, very heartbreaking moment for us as a family, knowing that she was right there in 100, 200 feet away. We could have just walked through that police tape, and she didn't need to die alone, which we would have never let her. And again, they got caught. So they're caught red-handed. She passed away, and the world knows. The world knows that they've lied. The world knows that they are not being humane out there. They're not performing humane actions. And there's animal cruelty going on out there with these animals while we have an interim stay order. And we wait to hear from the Supreme Court. A lot of people have become very passionate about our cause. And in doing so, we do get the keyboard warriors that are putting statements and things underneath their posts that are like, oh, bring guns to the farm. And we do not condone that. We've made our messaging very clear for months that we are not violent. We are here to represent how we need to do things in the future in a better way. And so the police liaisons were very concerned tonight, because they said, if that continues and there's rhetoric online about people wanting to bring guns, that they're going to have to bring in more force. And don't be alarmed if they're going to be out here with long guns and standing here on guard. And again, this is like a bit of a theatrical display. because we've said this from day one, even with them and following their own protocol. They're not following any of their own protocol here on our farm. They wear their hazmat suits in the pen. Then when they arrested us, they wore them out of the pen up to where we were detained. They drove in the pen with their vehicles. They left the pens without disinfecting. We were up being detained, my mom and I, and they had their hazmat suit on, and we had to say, you still have your hazmat suit on. And then they panicked. And then they handed their pole to another officer. He had a camera. And then that other officer grabbed the pole. We're like, well, if it was a viral threat, now you're infected. And we're not disinfected. We're right off the farm. Then they proceed to hand us their personal cell phones to call our lawyer. And we're like, okay, well, now you're infected and you're infected and you're infected if this was a real virulent threat to Canadian public health. Dr. Pelech knows from the months that we've been in this that this is just not the case. And what has become very clear that this is punishment. This is punishment for speaking up. This is hiding the truth. This is hiding scientific value and data in Canadian history. This is speculation versus science. They're choosing destruction over discovery. And this is a pivotal time in Canadian history because we're standing on the right side of Canadian history. But the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has never been watched. They've been able to operate with this excessive freedom and no accountability. And we all do know, I don't know the show is really about, but I've learned over the 10 months, that this is the Canadian Food Inspection Agency answers to the World Animal Health Organization. The World Animal Health Organization is taking directives from the World Health Organization. They're answering to the One Health agenda and the United Nations. So on a federal, provincial, and municipal level, we're really not even making the decisions for Canadians anymore. And we've really, kind of sold our soul to the devil 7 years ago, or that, when we've let those non-elected governing bodies continue to operate in Canada. And this has just been enlightening because we're at 263 days healthy ostriches. Not one of these ostriches that are on our farm today have ever been tested. So you tell me, while the world is screaming to stop, while we have the support of the FDA and the NIH and the Trump administration, we have the SMAC committee, which Dr. Pelech, I'm sure you could elaborate on. We have the Darwin Foundation. We have Brett Wilson offering $100,000 for testing. We have Canadians and people all over the world screaming, can't we just test them? And the Canadian Food Inspection Agency remains silent.
Dr. Pelech, you want to jump in there?
Well, that's correct. I mean, we actually were able to test eggs that were recovered from the summer of 2024 before the outbreak happened in my own lab. So I know firsthand, using a test that we designed to detect H5N1 specifically, that these ostriches have antibodies even before the outbreak occurred. And really, for a highly pathogenic virus, which the H5N1 is claimed is on this site, normally you have to have about an 85% case fatality rate. And we have the opposite. We have about a 15% case fatality rate. And apparently it's the ostriches that came to the farm after 2020, where they had previously an outbreak of what was at that time deemed to be Pseudomonas. But Pseudomonas is what actually most of these birds die from. They get influenza, but what they actually die from is secondary infection, which is, again, Pseudomonas in the birds. In humans, when we have deaths from influenza, it actually tends to be from pneumonia. So it may very well be that over the last few years, these birds have been continually exposed to the virus, and most of them developed strong immunity, and that explains in part why we didn't see greater casualties on the farm. And we haven't been able to see this before because the standard policy of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is that as soon as there's a PCR test for the H5 protein of the virus, or H7, these are the influenza strains that tend to affect birds, then they immediately order a call. And in the case of this farm, they gave that order within 41 minutes of receiving that information from the testing lab. And they were not confirmed to even be N1. They weren't confirmed by any studies to be highly pathogenic either. And so the data at this point indicates that these birds were infected with a reassortment, a hybrid virus of low pathogenicity and high pathogenicity virus. And as such, they don't pose a threat. And then on top of that, it's generally accepted that if you don't have any signs of illness, for 2 weeks after an infection with influenza, whether it's the birds or people, we assume that the person is no longer shedding the virus. And we also believe that that is because the immune response of the individual, animal or person, has been able to overcome the virus. And as such, the levels of the virus would be essentially non-existent. So the idea that's been put forward by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency that these birds are continually shedding for over 9 months now is kind of ridiculous based on how we treat everything else when it comes to influenza infections. And there's a claim that the soil is contaminated. And they base this on one study that was done with highly filtered water, so that anything that was like these viruses are about 0.14 microns in size, and they use a 0.2 micron filter. So the viruses could go through the filter in the water that was contaminated. And then they took that filtrate, put it at 4 degrees in a container that was the metal away from light. And they found that actually you could still get virus that was still active after that period of time. So this is the explanation of why they believe that the soil is contaminated for years. But on the other hand, in a normal situation, you have sunlight with UV radiation, which just mutates the virus's RNA, so it's unable to replicate. And there's microbial action in the soil. And if this was really true, if this was really believed, then we would have public health warnings every time that we have tens of thousands of flocks of geese and ducks landing on our schoolyards, our fields, our parks, laying their excrement everywhere. And we know that these migratory birds have H5N1 endemic. That's how the ostriches in the first place got infected. So there's only been one case of H5N1 in a person in Canada in at least the last 5 years. That person's recovered. And only 70 cases in the US. So this is not an easily transmissible virus. And on top of that, there's not a single case, even though this virus has been known, the H5N1, for about 66 years now. There's never been a case of a person who got H5N1 that transmitted to another person with H5N1. So this is not a very transmissible virus. And there's no evidence that these birds are shedding the virus. And everything that's been suggested has been conjecture, where they could have easily tested these birds and we would have gotten some valuable scientific information, but they've refused to do that.
Nice to see Daisy. Daisy, thanks for coming. We'll get you on in a second. But Leighton, I want to go to you quickly on this one. When the government seizes control and take custody of something, property, and you were bringing up the property rights issue, you believe that this is part of the challenge that we have here. What responsibilities do they have for the care and control of the property? They're not providing care the way that's necessary, or even allowing somebody who knows how to do it to do it. So what's the responsibility of the government when they seize property? What kind of care and control should they be doing?
Well, they're expected to exercise the degree of care and control that that the owner would. In other words, they they stand in the place of the owner as what's called a legal bailee, a public bailee, and it doesn't sound like that's happening here. Katie, we were talking before you came on the program about how this is impacting you and your family, because quite apart from the health issue, this is your business. These birds are your property. And I'm curious to know, because there was an Ontario court recently that found that there was a Section 7 charter violation. Section 7 is right to life, liberty, and security of the person. There was a group of homeless people, and a city in Ontario actually, took apart one of their homeless camps, one of these tents and things like that, and these people were taken to court, and the court actually recognized that these people had a constitutional right to shelter. Now, it would seem to me in your situation, there would be a much greater violation of your Section 7 right to life, liberty, and security of the person, because that would include your property and really the threat and destruction of your business. And I'm curious, is that one of the legal arguments that's being made by your legal team, that your charter rights are being violated by the federal government here?
No, it is not. Reason being, and this is what's so alarming about the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, when I say that they operate with excessive freedom, they are almost untouchable. The way they have all of their laws and everything drafted up within all of their policy and their search warrants. I mean, have you ever even had a search warrant that is allowed for a month? And the search warrants, 3 search warrants, and seized private property that wasn't even part of this. They actually seized my aunt and uncle's private property, which is next door, without my aunt and uncle's knowledge. And when they got here, they completely invaded my aunt and uncle's whole property. And then you speak out on it, and any which way you speak out on it, they're protected. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want, how they want to do it, and it's a problem. They have full authority, and they're just, nobody's holding them accountable and oversight. We did look at the charters. We did look at a lot of that. If we are allowed into Supreme Court, I think we're going to have that opportunity to raise a lot more awareness over a lot more material, because right now we've isolated ourselves to the December 31st Cull decision. That's what we've been fighting for 10 months. So finally we took a stance, said, okay, you won. You won that you guys say it was a justified act. After 41 minutes, signing off the death of almost 400 healthy animals that were resilient and recovered. Fine, you win. However, how do we not now open up the door to discuss the 263 days at the time from December 31st after, and these animals' health and well-being? They keep moving the goalpost on us, and it's really, really frustrating. At the beginning, it was about trading partner policies, and then we got our largest trading partner on board with a letter from the Trump administration, an RFK. Then they moved it to that we had a novel reassortment of avian influenza that Dr. Pelech spoke about. Then Dr. Pelech kind of dismissed those disputes, and it kind of went quiet. Then they moved it back to trading partner policy, because in Canada we're sectioned into zones, and to be avian influenza free, we have to be avian influenza free in all those zones for, I believe it's 28 days, Dr. Pelech?
That's right. Yeah, in the province.
Yeah. So 28 days. Okay. So, but again, how are we ever going to be avian influenza free if we have, as long as we have migratory birds, we're chasing it's a pipe dream. Like, we're never going to be avian influenza free. So killing off all of our farmers and livestock is not going to solve the solution. But they went to, then they moved, so it was trading partner policies. So then from novel reassortment, went back to trading partner policies. Then we got our second RFK letter and the offer of the NIH and the FDA and the collaboration, and them even paying to test our animals. Then even Dr. Oz offering his 900-acre ranch, and said if Canada doesn't want them, and if we don't want to take the risk, the U.S. will take the risk, because they see way more opportunity in the research of these animals that are prehistoric with robust antibodies than they do, value in them alive than they do dead. Then that was silent. Now they're back to trading partner policies. So these animals have become they're caught in the crosshairs of trade politics, not about their health, not about anything else. And now they're caught in the crosshairs of their saving face. Because if these animals get tested and they show that there's no live virus, but there's robust, beautiful antibodies, and we can prove, which Dr. Pelech is ready tomorrow, to create diagnostic test kits to put these into action, then they would look like fools. But what they don't realize in the middle of what they're doing, that they're still making themselves even look worse than if they would have just tested them and said, hey, this is a great opportunity for Canada, economic opportunity, scientific value, research opportunity in a recovered herd that's surviving with what they say is the most virulent threat. So if anything, these animals should hold more scientific value even more now than ever, because why would we not be researching these animals with surviving with the most virulent form of H5N1, if that was the truth? And why would we not be seeing how we could harness this opportunity to protect animal and human life?
Nico, you were in Ottawa during the convoy protest stuff. Are you seeing parallels here where the government's not coming out to talk? Like, we reached out to the CFIA for comment. They responded with, we're not going to talk about this issue. RCMP are just saying we're following orders. Are you seeing any parallels with what happened in Ottawa in 2022?
That's a question I have for Katie, because I know where you're going with this, and I appreciate you feeding me like this, but how, considering all the information that we know, just what was shared between Dr. Pelech and you today right here, considering the way our government is behaving and has been behaving since COVID, considering how people worldwide see those animals, are you surprised that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are not standing for you? Because I got to tell you, I'm not surprised, because that guy's not a leader. If you want to look for his balls, they're probably in his wife's purse somewhere. But are you surprised that he's not standing up for you? Because that, to me, is an easy win for him. I don't think there's anybody on the conservative the conservative side in Canada that would actually be against him standing up. On the contrary. So does that surprise you?
I want to say it surprised me because, of its platform, and I was very naive in a lot of ways 10 months ago, and I would watch their platforms and I would believe a lot of the things that they would say that they stood for. And I was more surprised when we were getting, and we still have way more international support than we do within our own country when it has to do with government. And it took a lot of calling them out. And I have to give it a hand of applause to Jordan Keeley, an MLA out of the Northern Peace, who really stood up for the agricultural side and brought us into the legislature and used his question period to bring up a hard issue. And Lana Poppin just answered that back with another question. Then we had David Williams, MLAs. We had Scott Anderson, an MP in our local area, stand up, a Conservative MP. Has been a real fighter for us. But we had EB speak out on it very lightly, and he just said, I'm frustrated with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency's approach. Shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all solution. That was it. And then we've had Mel Arnold and John Rustad speak up on it. But again, Pierre he won't even say the word ostrich. So I don't know what's happening behind the scenes. It's very confusing to a lot of people in Canada and across the world right now. What is happening behind the scenes, and what are we hiding, or what is going on? Are we really protecting just the supply chain management? And are we really just protecting the Canadian Poultry Association? Because that's what the Canadian Food Inspection Agency continues to say, is that they're protecting the Canadian Poultry Association. Well, I didn't know that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency swore an allegiance just to the Canadian poultry industry. I thought that they were working for all industries and protecting all life. But yeah, I mean, right now I'm very surprised. I still am. I guess I'm learning a lot along the way. I'm very disappointed in our Canadian government. Here we have a lot of economic opportunity and a lot of scientific value sitting on the farm. And what we're seeing, even with the layers of the breakdown in trust of this big organization, I'm really shocked that that's not become more of a talking point for Pierre. What do we do here? Because we are putting Canadians more at risk than ever. And these large prehistoric animals that have survived on the planet for millions of years, they hold a lot of value and they've survived for a reason. They have amazing immune systems. One ostrich egg is equivalent to 100 chicken eggs worth of antibodies. But then there you go back to the Poultry Association again. Now we're putting ourselves at odds with the Poultry Association and dipping into their pockets. Because if their antibodies now are not as sufficient as the ostrich antibodies, now there is another conflict of interest. So rather than allowing us to have a more neutral playing field and all of us get to participate, we're isolating the protection to one industry, and we have a big problem here. So I don't know who's protecting who, but even RCMP, our Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I was on the phone last night after Spirit. We saw her passing away, and I was very upset. And Ben, our police liaison, said, I know you're upset with me, Katie. And I said, where did you, he said, we swore an oath. And I said, you swore an oath to who? Did you swear an oath to protect just the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, or did you swear an oath to protect Canadians? Because right now you have the enemy, the criminals are on your side. They're on the other side of your police tape, and you're protecting the criminals and you're arresting the good people. So they have an obligation here, and I'm hoping on a political level and on a Canadian government level that we get some clarity here of what's going to happen, because the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they deserve to be arrested and they deserve to be charged for animal cruelty and operating in a manner that has put Canadians all at risk.
Well, I'll let you know, Katie, the RCMP oath, if you read it, it's to themselves. It's to the RCMP itself, not to the people, not to the Crown, not to anybody else, but to themselves. And they also have a secrecy oath. And they also have a secrecy oath. So they won't talk about stuff like that. I think you were right, though, on X earlier today or yesterday when you said follow the money. Because I'm not sure how Poilievre becomes a millionaire as an MP, but he is a millionaire. Chris, welcome to BC. You flew out there to see what's going on. Can you kind of just give us an update about the mood that's there, and as you got to BC, what's going on there?
Yeah. I mean, I can speak to my mood for sure, and kind of what I felt. Like for me, it's been absolutely whirlwind. I can't imagine for Katie what it's been like for you. I've been following along, and I got to meet your family when I got here, and we haven't had a chance to sit down yet, but. I mean, I went 24 hours, kind of decided to do this, left Ottawa this morning at 5 a.m. my time, got here, met Mike, was pretty excited, saw Mike, it's a beautiful area, we're driving down, and we pull over just to kind of get a view of the death pit, I don't know what to call it, the bales, and just as I was kind of I'm so happy, everything's beautiful, it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen, and then we see that. And that's right when I got the news about the death of Spirit. So it was man, a whirlwind of emotions, I guess. And then, Mike and I took a little drive. We actually met with some of the RCMP, me and Mike. He happens to know one. So that was weird. And then I came in, and not long ago, it was Katie's speech. I just posted it. It's been wild. But the people here are super friendly. Man, it's very nice change from Ottawa. There's some people I know. Everyone seems to be super helpful, super friendly. Yeah, it's a lot to take in, honestly. I'm still kind of a little bit in shock, maybe.
Well, let me ask you a question I asked Nico, but I'll ask you quickly, Chris. Do you see any parallels to the Ottawa convoy in 2022, where it's the police and the government versus the people? You're not getting answers. the government and the police are kind of stepping up the force. They're making threats. Are you seeing any parallels between this situation and Ottawa in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see the police parallels, and I mean, I was right there when the RCMP went down Wellington Street with their 4-foot beating sticks and shot Alexa Laval with the gas grenade, and I've been through that. I also see a lot of parallels to other things, though, like to the grassroots nature of the Freedom Convoy, and from where I sit, I come in doing my regular coverage, but I started covering this like whenever it was, I was like hitting like 5 million impressions a day or more. And it was people from it wasn't a left or right issue. The only people that had a problem were people that like specifically hate me or Elizabeth May, not liking MAGA. But it's really seems to be a grassroots thing, and people are coming at it maybe from different angles, but it affects so many people, right? There's so many issues at play here: property rights, animal rights, human rights. And I can't help but think that it might be the ostriches today, but it could be us in one of those pits.
Now, Katie, that is something that people say a lot of. Yeah, ostriches today, but this could be us tomorrow. Do you see that as well? Like, this is why we have to stand up on this particular issue to save the ostriches, because if we allow them to come and take a property, call a whole bunch of birds, even have very weak signs or propaganda signs to do it, do you think, Canadians, maybe other farmers, they could be next?
They're doing it. Made. They're already giving us. They're already already getting rid of us. It's a one size fits all little white pill solution. You're sad, take Made. You're depressed, take Made. You can't walk anymore, take Made. I think they're already doing it, and I think yes, I do. Though I see this as if we can't stop it at Universal Ostrich Farm, which I do believe is ground zero for change at the moment. Then with all of our international support, the Trump administration, the people screaming from the mountaintops across the world to stop this, and then I don't believe that any Canadian farmer is safe. What we're fighting for here is a policy that's broken, and then that's led into obviously the evolution of realizing that it's the whole organization that's broken. But that policy is coming to a farm near you. The policy, same policy we're fighting, we've just been trying to educate farmers on. They can enter your property based off suspicion and kill every animal you own. Dog, cat, your fish, your snakes, anything they want. Your cattle, your everything. So based off suspicion, you tell me how much power that is. And they don't have any accountability. They don't have a third party, somebody who oversees their audits. They failed their 2018, 2021 audits miserably. They don't have any, so they have no oversight. And it is, I do believe it's every farm is at stake. And what we're seeing is a lot of farmers who've had generational farms that have had them handed down. Or grandfathered down, or maybe an older couple in their 70s that have their cattle. I mean, they're not going to repopulate their animals. Who wants to continue to see their animals based off of speculation all be completely murdered? And then they say, just replace them. Dr. Pelech, in his science knows very well what we're losing here. And stamping out sounds powerful, but when you say stamping out natural immunity, it doesn't sound so pretty. And losing our genetic diversity in our animals and our strength. We're losing our biodiversity, and we're losing our natural immunity in our animals. You can't just keep killing everything that has had long genetics, strong genetics. That those antibodies that an animal has gets passed down to their young. And when those genetics get passed down to their young, it just keeps going on, and it's a beautiful thing, but we need that. It's necessary for survival, unless we want to become completely reliant on vaccinations for survival. And they are like a bunch of kids running around with loaded handguns, and they're shooting aimlessly, and they don't know the ripple effect of their actions are going to have in, say, 3 to 4 to 5 years from now. So our farmers are just bowing out. They're getting tired. They don't want to keep doing this process. And our large organizations like the Canadian poultry industry keep getting funneled money by the federal government for upgrades and to continue to go and grow. But their animals are only, I mean, these poultry facilities are chickens that are alive for only about 6 months. Not a long living animal, especially like an ostrich. That is not poultry. And that could have even happened. We could have just removed ostriches from the poultry category, but putting ourselves at great risk. Goes a lot deeper, and they are trying to push us, I do believe, into our 15-minute cities and take over our farms.
Dr. Pelech, we were talking about the $2.5 million BC project that was trying to address the avian flu issue. We talked about how antibodies infused in filters can help that project or that study. And could this be a fork in the road? Like, either we get this right and you can actually address avian flu in a different way, or we don't and we just stamp these out. Are we at a fork in the road on this one?
I think we are, actually, because a lot has come to light about a little bit more about the science. Certainly, you have to consider that there's about 14.46 million chickens and ducks and geese that have been executed on farms in Canada. Recently, last couple of years, over 160 million in the United States. They recognize in the U.S. that the culling practice doesn't actually work. And the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has argued that this is the best way to stop the spread of the virus. But in reality, when you've got it out there in the wild with migratory birds, you can do all the stamping out you want on poultry farms, but you will continue to get infections that occur until such a time as those birds in the wild develop herd immunity, which I suspect is happening, plus the normal evolution of the virus to a more infectious form, but a much more benign form of low pathogenicity. And I think that's where we're at now. So to my knowledge, there has not been an outbreak in Canada of H5N1 in any farms or anywhere else since the last outbreak with the ostriches on the farm. There's been one or two other outbreaks that were about the same time. And in one of those cases, it was devastating for the farmer. They waited a long time to get their compensation. This was for chickens and ducks. And the farmer basically decided they were not going to continue. So I think we're endangering our smaller farms by these actions. It's not really working. When you look at the amplitude of the peaks of incidence numbers across Canada, it really hasn't really changed that much. It's slowly coming down a bit, but I don't think it's got anything to do with the culling, because the incidence follows the trend of the migration of the birds itself, not spreading from farm to farm, which again I think is very unlikely, because the people that would be tending the animals on the farm, in fact, the most likely spread would be people that are inspecting farms. They're going from one farm to another farm. But again, it's very, very low rate of any kind of transmission from in this case, a bird to a human, and then from the human back to other birds. So I really don't think that this is actually effective at all. And there's other strategies that can be tried. As you pointed out earlier, we could develop filters with antibodies from these ostriches. There's really no other reservoir that's available that we can tap into to get antibodies against H5N1 that can be utilized in an industrial scale to produce filters and masks that can protect farm workers and protect the birds from getting infected with H5N1.
Now, Leighton, as this heads toward, or is in the Supreme Court now, we're waiting for the decision on whether or not they're going to provide a hearing on this. Can you kind of take us through some of the processes that we should be expecting for the Supreme Court? How quick can an expedited application go? And how long could this stay in place before we get a decision out of them? Do you have any ideas on that?
Well, the real problem with the Supreme Court is that they have absolute discretion to whether or not they're going to hear a case, and they still have not heard any case involving COVID. They have refused to hear any case involving COVID, even ones that have affected millions of Canadians. For example, all the lockdown cases that were decided at the appellate court level in provinces were sort of waved aside by the Supreme Court. This, to me, is a huge problem, and it's symptomatic of the judicial activism that we're experiencing in our country. I don't want to be I don't want to discourage Katie and her group, but I think it is unlikely. I don't know whether the Supreme Court has granted leave to hear this yet. I would be surprised if they did, because they tend not to want to get involved in any type of case that has political implications unless it touches on one of the left's favorite topics. So whenever it's, for example, things like Indigenous rights or LGBTQ or things of that nature, they seem very ready to get involved and create all kinds of new rights, for example, that aren't in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But they tend to sort of wave aside cases like this and say to, federal and provincial governments, look, this is your baby, you rock it. One of the things I wanted to comment on that Katie brought up, and this is something that I don't think many Canadians realize, but Katie is living through right now. There's a great book that was published by Neil Gorsuch, who's on the U.S. Supreme Court, and it's called Overruled. And the title is a bit of a play on words, but what Justice Gorsuch talks about is the way that our laws, most of the laws, the vast majority of laws that people in countries like the United States and Canada live under, are not created by our elected representatives anymore. They're not people we've elected. They're not people who are answerable to us. They're bureaucrats. And what's happened at the federal level, at the provincial level, at the municipal level, is most of the law that is being applied and that is so oppressive, and we saw this particularly during COVID, when for example, people who were hired by health authorities essentially became, police Nazis enforcing COVID restrictions. Here we have government bureaucrats, people that no one is elected. They're not really accountable to anyone, and what they're doing is they're applying regulations that are made by them for them, and they're not accountable to the people or to other government agencies or to our courts. It's very difficult to get any kind of judicial review of these decisions. I think I was on Jason's show recently, and I was talking about a CRTC decision involving a couple of broadcasters in Canada, Christian broadcasters, Corey and Ellen Huntsberger, who wanted to buy a radio station in Saskatchewan and broadcast Christian radio there. And the CRTC, much like we see here, they just exercised their own bureaucratic authority. They refused it because these guys wouldn't sign on to all the woke specifications, the ideology that they would have to in order to run a radio station. And then even more offensive was they said in their decision that they violated the constitutional rights of these broadcasters, but then they reviewed their own decision, and they said that they thought that their own decision was reasonable. And guess what? The regulations say that they can do it, and there isn't even an avenue. I researched it. There isn't even any real prospect of judicial review. And so one of the, I guess, wonderful things about this, it's revealing so much. I think one of you, it might have been Jason, who said that really this case involving the ostriches is really manifesting so many ways that our institutions are letting us down. Here's another example. It's exposing the reality that most of the law that Canadians like Katie live under and that impact us are not made by the people we elect. It's really a facade. The truth is, we're being governed, and we're being controlled, we're being pushed around and bullied by unelected bureaucrats, and most of whom are really, really awful people. I'm going to say that. They are really, really awful people. I represented Pastor James Coates, who went to jail during COVID, and the young woman who was responsible for having him arrested, for shutting down his church, having it barricaded for months. I asked her, I said, what was your training in law enforcement? She said she was on a Zoom call for 30 minutes. That's the level of accountability and training. We're under the tyranny of bureaucrats. In this case, really illustrates that. And sadly, it's not unique to what Katie's going through. And it's very important that Canadians realize that this is going on, because we've got to go back to our MPs and our MLAs and say, look, we don't stand for this. You can't just farm off responsibility for lawmaking to these unelected bureaucrats. This is your job. You're accountable to us. We elected you. We didn't elect, John Doe bureaucrat who's, exercising all these crazy search warrants and who's pointing guns at people out on an ostrich ranch. And of course, we have people like Pierre Poilievre sort of washing their hands and won't even say the word ostrich. But this is a huge problem in our country. And it gets back to what we were talking about, the loss of trust in our institutions. A big reason why we've lost trust in our institutions is because those institutions are under the tyranny of bureaucrats.
100%. And Nico, I'm going to jump to you next because I kind of want to get to some questions. I'm just going to ask a quick question that came to me through our website. The credentials of everybody here was talked about at the beginning of this episode, so you can always go back on the replay and check that out. But we have a doctor, a lawyer, an owner, and an asshole in Quebec, and he's up next. Go ahead.
Leighton, considering this question's for the whole panel, considering the bureaucrats that you're talking about are not here in Canada, we tend to talk about what's going on in Canada, but let's be real here. We're talking about unelected officials, bureaucrats that are the WEF, that are the Bill Gates of this world, that has said openly that they don't want us to eat meat, not real meat. They want us to eat lab meat or bugs. And I see cases like Katie, and all I'm seeing is that's just the next step. They want to bleed out farmers to make sure that we don't have the resources to provide to our supply chains. Because if you look right now, they say that just look at the amount of cattle. We have less cattle than we did in the 1980s. Yet we're a lot more people in Canada and we have more resources to have more cattle. That's not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. So the question is for you guys in the panel, am I the crazy one on the right here that's just a far right crazy that just takes off his tinfoil hat for the show? Or do you guys actually see that there is a global agenda here, that we have a uniparty in Canada? It doesn't matter that you're looking to the right, you're looking to the left, or you're looking to the center. They all represent the overlords, should I say. It's not a left versus right problem. It's a top versus bottom problem.
Well, we'll throw it to Katie next, but go ahead and grab your tinfoil hat. I can see it in the back there.
It's right there, bro.
Katie,
right there.
Yeah, Katie, what are your thoughts? Is this going all the way up to WHO, some globalists? Like, what's going on here? And are they trying to destroy our food supply?
Absolutely. It's hard not to see that. It doesn't make sense otherwise. It is a top to bottom problem. It's not a left to right. When it comes to animals, how can you be? It's not a left or right. That's almost one of the things that could unite the left to right as an animal. They're pretty defenseless and they don't have a voice. They're pretty easy to represent So I do see that there's nothing else that comes to mind in our situation than nobody wants to touch us because we are standing up between big pharma. That's one of them. We have an ability to help people live longer. That's probably what they don't want. And we're offering something that dips into big pharma's pockets, because if we have a more natural, sustainable, reliable solution like therapeutics, offering antibodies, then that goes against our whole vaccination protocol and the fear mongering amongst public. We're scary for them because I think we're overriding they say that we're setting a dangerous precedent. No, we aren't. They're setting a dangerous precedent. When you start talking to our children on mainstream media that antibodies don't exist, and you start talking in the way that natural immunity isn't a thing, that is a dangerous precedent when Canadians and people across the world start to believe that is not a way of living longer, is by actually developing stronger antibodies. So I've watched mainstream media, I've watched news anchors laugh about antibodies, and I'm like, Are you stupid? Like, how can you sit there? We've watched Brian Conway and Angela Rasmussen say, well, there's no way of knowing if they're sick. They've actually said that. And everybody looked at the screen and went, test them? Like, maybe we could just test them. So there's just, I think it's definitely a way bigger problem that we have here. And how do we get our Canadian sovereignty back? Right? Where does that start? And what does that look like? But we need to start repairing and protecting our country, because once they're done with us, they don't care. And once they use up our resources and they push our farms into the 15-minute cities and we're eating their lab-grown meat, they're just moving on to the next country and the next country. So they're not looking out for Canadians. They're looking out for their agenda. And we need to reclaim our Canadian sovereignty back.
So, Dr. Pelech, a couple of years ago, I was looking into the nitrogen issue, the fertilizer issue, 30% reduction across the board is what they said. And this was against farmers who actually know how much nitrogen and fertilizer put on their fields. They know by the kilo exactly how much is needed, but yet they're being told to go 30% reduction. I got into a Twitter fight, it was Twitter at the time, with a scientist out of Red Deer, Agricultural Department of Canada, and saying, like, where's the science behind this? Why 30%? Why not regionally allow them to do what they need to do? And the end of the argument was, he told me to go Google global resources to go find out why. He couldn't provide it, but global resources will have that information for me. Is that the trend that we're talking about here? We're taking basically marching orders, and our own scientists within Canada are doing their own thinking on their own. Is that what we're seeing here?
Well, the situation is actually far more complex. Firstly, I'm vegetarian, and I'm concerned about these the trend that's going forward with the control more centrally in other countries of what we do here. The situation with nitrogen, our atmosphere is primarily nitrogen, so that's nothing unnormal. We would normally have fixation of nitrogen, when rotating crops, for example, with clover, but we have fertilizers and they're very effective. And when you think about it, 100 years ago, 95% of our population lived on farms and supported basically feeding the rest of the population as well. Now we have less than 5% of people living on farms, supporting a much larger population by about 2 to 3-fold. So there is a real miracle in a sense of being able to use chemical fertilizers, but the way we do the farming is still very destructive in many cases. Like for cattle, we separate the cattle from really natural terrain, and they don't fertilize basically the terrain. We have to take instead that terrain where we're growing crops and put fertilizer, artificial fertilizer in there. So there's some really strange practices we have. What strikes me about these ostriches is that they're actually being maintained in a semi-wild environment. They're running around free in over 20 acres of land. And the concern that I would say the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has here is that they don't want to have animals out in the open. They want biosecurity, where they're being locked into smaller premises, carefully controlled what they're being exposed to, more factory type activities. And so I see what's happening on the farm. It's an attack on even that kind of treatment of the animals that we have on farms, even if they're being used for human consumption ultimately. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why this farm has been singled out, because they do let their animals run around semi-free. They live outdoors basically. So there's this big trend that's really happened over many years, and we have to have practices that develop that also consider, the humane treatment of the animals, even if they're going to be slaughtered. And there has been a move in the industry to try to do that, but that's not what I'm seeing, where these become more factory farms and they're not being run by small groups of people like these farmers that really care about their animals. They've named them and they've cared for them for decades. That kind of thinking is being eliminated by these strategies that government would like us to do to feed our population.
So like 15 minutes on a farm level, like they want to control the living conditions and that kind of stuff as well. So Leighton, when you were talking about the bureaucrats, you were kind of talking about the local bureaucrats, Canadian bureaucrats. Is there a bureaucratic level higher that Nico's talking about here?
Oh, absolutely. And, I have a friend who lives in Nevada whose parents emigrated from Cuba. And in Cuba, if you kill a cow in Cuba, you get the death penalty. So Cuba is a country that's locked in 1959, but Cuba is a country that is exempt from all this globalism stuff, and so they understand the value of an animal like a cow or an ostrich or a pig. But talking about this sovereignty, Katie mentioned this word sovereignty, and just today I was writing a commentary for my show on Bill C9. And really, these are variations on a theme, but the sort of eye of Sauron from which all of these awful ideas are emanating is Brussels. Is places like Davos, the Davos crowd. And when we look at the sovereignty of our speech, which is being taken away from us through bills like C8 and C9, it's really variations on a theme. We're really talking about the same kinds of things. It's the same battleground that Katie is on right now. Because what are we fighting for? We're fighting for our speech. Well, what is speech? Well, speech is the way that we communicate with each other. And really what bills like C9 are doing is they're saying to us not only what we can say, but they're saying that they're actually controlling the way that we communicate with each other, which is even deeper. And you can see the parallels between a bill like C9 and what's happening here. And it's the same people causing it all. The same people who are dreaming up laws like Bill C9 are the bureaucrats who are terrorizing Katie on her ostrich farm. It's all the same people, and they're taking their cues from the Davos crowd. And that's why the situation is so different in Canada versus in the United States. And I think this is why Canada is sort of a flashpoint, because we're so close. We're sort of between the European world and adjacent to the U.S. So we see the difference in the U.S. where Donald Trump is going to the UN and basically tell him, sorry, Nico, I'm going to use your language. Go fuck you. Right? And whereas, Mark Carney is saying the absolute opposite. What Mark Carney fundamentally is a bureaucrat. People think that he's some kind of economic genius. He's not. He's a bureaucrat. He's a corporate banker. And to call him, to compare him to someone like an economist who knows something about the economy is like comparing a doctor who does nose jobs to a brain surgeon. Yes, a doctor who does rhinoplasty, he does surgery in the neighborhood of the brain. Okay, he's not a brain surgeon. And what Canada needs right now, pardon the metaphor, is a brain surgeon. We don't need another nose job. That's what I'm seeing right now, and what people don't understand about Mark Carney. We think he's some kind of financial genius, and of course he's just nodding his head to the Davos crowd. And so really when you look at other areas of Canadian life and the laws that we're living under, whether it's gun control or it's control of speech or it's what's happening on Katie's ostrich farm, it's really all the same thing. And you can point to also, the prosecutions, the public persecutions of people like Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, or what happened to the Coots boys. It's all variations on a theme. And the theme is our country is being governed by people outside of Canada. The people that we are electing into office are not running our country. And that is why there's this cognitive dissonance, to use Dr. Pelech's words, between what we think Canada should be, what our laws ought to be, and what they ought to do, and what's actually happening boots on the ground in places like Katie's ostrich farm.
But it's more than
Nico,
just
bring the
C9,
question
though.
back to you. Yeah, go ahead, bud.
Yeah, all I was going to say is it's more than C9. Like I've done some deep dive with with the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom with John Carpe on C2, C8, C9, and we're going to do one on C63 when it pops again, because it was just announced that it will be retabled. And if you take the time to read them, and unfortunately it's probably 250, 300 pages if you combine all the bills. They have little pieces of censorship in every single one of them that all relate together. They didn't make a big brother bill with everything in it, because we would have seen it.
But it's a hyperlink system.
You just look at it's C8, the one about the cyber attacks. I worked in the telecom world for more than 20 years. I sold the services that they're talking about in there, and there's nothing really wrong about what they're asking, except they're asking for a bit too much when it comes to being able to go see the telco's equipment. But I've seen that in RFPs before. It's the amendments that they're trying to push to the Telecommunication Act of 1993 that's within that bill. It's not the bill itself that's problematic, is the amendments. And the question I have for you guys is, we consider Bill C2, C8, C9, C63, the new one that's coming. You're looking at the gun grab that's starting in Cape Breton right now, that's gonna go through the whole Canada soon. For the longest time, I thought that it was about self-defense. Like, they were taking the guns away, just like Marxists do and communist countries do, that they don't want us to have like a Second Amendment in the US. But more and more that I see like situation with what's happening with Katie's farm is, it's not just about removing self-defense, but it's about removing the power to hunt. Because as much as you look at Canada, if it wasn't for guns, we wouldn't have survived. Can you imagine coming here 500 years ago? It's minus 30 outside and you're fighting bears with your bare hands. Yeah, no, ain't happening. It was not happening. So guns were important self-defense, obviously, but that's how we put food on the table. So the question I have for you guys, do you think that's what's going on? So C2, C8, C9, C63 is shutting us up to make sure that we can't have conversations like what we're having right now. And then the gun grab is as much for self-defense against the government about the Second Amendment in the US, but about our ability to hunt as well.
That's a great question, Nico. So yeah, Katie, we'll go to you on this, because the food supply is a big concern. As Nico highlighted, we have less cows now than we did before. We import more now. We got Mexico meat, we got Australian meat, and when they're going after farmers on like fertilizer, water, land with undrip, now property, is this an attack on farmers, the food supply? And what are your thoughts about what Nico said there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a farmer, it's essential for us to have guns on the farm. We have grizzly bears, we have cougars, and we have predators for the ostriches. It's so if, just the gun, the guns, the gun rights, or property rights. This was a very, very clear display of the biggest overreach. The minute I had grabbed those papers from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency through that fence, I told him, I said, no, I didn't want to touch them. I said, once I take these papers from you, you have full right to our property. And he said, no. And it's all caught on a live. He's like, no. Just take them and I'll explain it to you. And I said, no, I was hesitant. I'm holding my hands back. And he shoved them through the fence, the quarantine fence, in his normal clothes. And then I took him. And he said, you are now to leave your property. We are in control of your property. We are in control of your animals now. And that moment was just, I guess I want to just never see any farmer ever have to go through that moment ever again. Those are our animals. That's our land. And to not have a position or a place there, to be able to have any role in that, in the say of the health and the well-being of these animals, how this is going to play out, and just in the simplicity of being threatened 6 months in jail and a $200,000 fine if we test one animal. That's per animal being threatened 6 months in jail and a $200,000 fine. I mean, this is absolute ludicrousy. This cannot stay the way it is. We are in a very dark place right now, and I still think that there's a lot of Canadians that have hope, and this has to be the turning point. I really see this as a revolutionary moment, where we have to hold people accountable. And I don't know what this looks like. God is good, and God has been really good on this journey. He keeps performing miracles every time we're right before we're going to fall off an edge. But we need to protect all of our rights. And you're right, these bills, like not being censorship and not being able to share news on Facebook and share media, sharing what's actually going on in the world. I've done so many interviews with people across in the States, and the biggest thing is they are so aware. They know more than we do. I've learned so much by talking to our international counterparts than I have been able to just talking to people here in Canada. So that's alarming in itself when our neighboring country knows more about what's really going on than all of us being brainwashed by mainstream media and the control. We have a lot of problems. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is actually helping us because they're exposing layers and layers of this corruption right now.
So, Dr. Pelech, don't worry, we're not going to hold it against you that you're vegetarian. That's your choice. That's fine. But do you see the same thing here happening? Property rights, gun rights, and is Katie right? Outside of Canada, they're far more aware of what's going on here, a little bit more intelligent on the issue. And we got to keep reaching out internationally to kind of get the word out. You're muted, my friend.
Sorry. It's the boiling frog kind of analogy. All this stuff is going on, but it happens relatively slowly, that we just don't see these rights eroding. And I do believe that they are all connected. It's a question of centralized control of the population, ideally for our own good. But unfortunately, you cannot necessarily trust the people that are pulling the strings. I've seen this in the case of, I was bringing up in another interview, the monkeypox, where the leader, the director general of the World Health Organization, Ghebreyesus, he was advised by his own scientists in a panel that the monkeypox, the mpox, was not a pandemic in proportions. It was affecting about 96% very active gay males. And he completely overruled his advisory panel and declared it a pandemic officially, which allows a number of different of powers then given to the bureaucrats. And that was renewed again, actually, about a little over 6-7 months ago. But the Director General himself is not an elected official. He's appointed. And the main people that are determining what the agenda is going to be for World Organization for Mental Health are the people who fund it. And that was primarily China and to a certain extent at one point United States, but the Bill Gates Foundation, a lot of private enterprise. So these are people that are controlling the people that are supposed to be in charge of these organizations. These things are all behind the scenes. It's not democratic, and it's not transparent, and that's to me a major concern.
Leighton, are they deteriorating our rights here? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah.
I do have something that is just really bothering me. It keeps popping into my mind that I do hope we get to have just a chance to discuss. I mean, this is a military operation that you're watching here. For our farm, and us humble farmers are good people, we're spending probably, I've been told, I don't understand, but about probably $500,000 a day of Canadian taxpayer dollars for all these RCMP. We have a task force here. We have a drone force. We have a command center 5 kilometers up the road in a provincial sand pit. We have spent thousands of dollars of our taxpayer dollars bringing in those large hay square bales on semi-trucks after semi-trucks to build a kill pen. We have drone blocking jammer equipment behind their fences that we've seen with binoculars covered in camouflage netting. We have telescopic devices behind their fences that we've seen with binoculars. There's about, at any given time, we have about 30 officers here. And we have the Canadian Food Inspection Agency here, 135 kilometers away from a major city. So they have to travel an hour and a half to get to their hotel. LOA, travel. They're all from all over British Columbia. They pulled RCMP officers. This is a military operation here for a farm that has been asking to request to test their animals. And that has to ring alarm bells across the world, because if we can get away with this right now in Canada and they actually get away with this should just sound alarm bells across the world. What happened in Canada, the world is watching, and they're watching this play out. The amount of force, we have helicopters. We had black helicopters flying and checking on us with spotlights at night. This is a 24-hour-a-day operation.
Yeah,
This
is an important point.
Yeah, I'll bring it to you right in a second, Leighton, because you're right, Katie. They actually call themselves paramilitary. It's been on the record in the courts many times, the RCMP. And I'm just going to read you the two oaths, so you fully understand what you're dealing with when you're talking to the RCMP. This is the oath of office, and this is found in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Act, 1985. Schedule Section 14, Oath of Office. I, insert name, solemnly swear that I will faithfully, diligently, and impartially execute and perform the duties required of me as a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and I will well and truly obey and perform all lawful orders and instructions that I receive as such, without fear, favor, or affection of or towards any person. So help me God. That's the full oath. Now here's the oath of secrecy. I, insert name, solemnly swear that I will not disclose or make known to any person not legally entitled thereto any knowledge or information obtained by me in the course of my employment with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So help me God. You can see why they can't talk to you and who they actually work for themselves. And it's very clear, because this last section here, without favor or affection of or towards any persons. That's Canadians. So frankly, so without favor or affection towards Canadians. Go ahead, Leighton.
Oh, I was just in sort of in response to Katie's point. There's a woman named Hannah Arendt who wrote some really great books on 20th century totalitarianism. She wrote specifically about the Nazis and also about the Soviets. And what Katie is living through right now is one of the stages of totalitarianism. So in the process of totalitarianism, there has to be a show of force. There has to be a show of coercion. And the point of that is to scare the rest of the people into not resisting. And then the next stage is then that begins to control thought. So for example, in the North Korean language, there is no equivalent word for escape. It's not in their language. Hence, very few people try to escape from North Korea. That would shock a lot of people. I'm going to quote from maybe the most overquoted book right now. It's Orwell's 1984. It reads, "Every concept that can ever be needed will be expressed by exactly one word, with its meaning rigidly defined and all its subsidiary meanings rubbed out and forgotten." So this is the implications of this are really profound, because if freedom is the ability to choose, and we could apply that to Katie's situation, she should have the freedom to choose how her farm is run as long as they're obeying the law, right? The freedom of thought is the ability to conceive of alternatives, right? But systematically dismantling concepts like freedom and justice and truth and health, property, individuality, that ensures that those ideas basically fade out of the collective consciousness and they become kind of forgotten ghosts of yore. And so this is a deliberate impoverishment of language. And it serves to prevent rebellion, the kind of rebellion, even peaceful resistance, not through force, but just through, let's call it cognitive incapacitation. people lose the ability to even think about rebelling because the show of force frightens people, and to the point where a lot of the things that we're talking about right now, things like freedom and justice and truth and individuality, those words just become not part of things that people talk about anymore because they're so scared. And so, unfortunately, what Katie is saying is very, very true. That this ostrich farm is a flashpoint for, and it's asking the question: what kind of country is Canada right now? We know what kind of country Canada was, the one that we all grew up in. But what kind of country is it right now? And it just might be true that Canada is a pre-totalitarian regime. There's evidence of that. COVID is evidence of that. What's happening, what happened at the Freedom Convoy, the way it was broken up, is evidence of that. What happened at Coutts is evidence of that. What our courts did with all the court challenges to COVID and lockdowns, that was evidence of that. And what's happening on this ostrich farm is evidence that Canada might be a pre-totalitarian society. And so this is why I think the outcome of this is very, very important. We're very fortunate that, Katie obviously has a stainless steel spine, much stronger than 99% of most Canadians. And God bless her for holding up. I hope she keeps her faith, and she's strong in her faith, that the Lord will guide her and her family through this awful ordeal. But really, she's so right. This is a really important moment because they're feeling the jackboots right now. This militarism, and it's by design, and it's designed to frighten people into, don't you protest again. There's a good reason why we haven't had another protest or gathering on the level of the Freedom Convoy since 2022. People watch that and they're scared. There's been talk of having another convoy, but let's face it hasn't happened. And so to some degree, you have to say the way that Trudeau, took apart that convoy, as disgraceful as it was, perhaps the most disgraceful moment in our history, it was effective in terms of discouraging and suppressing, any type of large-scale protest that would embarrass the government. And I think that what's happening on the ostrich farm, Katie's ostrich farm, is another flashpoint for this. They're trying to flex their muscles and show Canadians, hey, don't you dare step out of line. You do as you're told, and if you don't, you're going to suffer the consequences. So I quite agree and understand what's happening there on that ostrich farm, and we should not dismiss for a moment the relevance of it.
This is punishment. This is punishment versus justice, and they even allotted. They created a Canadian Food Inspection Agency social media task force for just the Universal Ostrich Farm. Ever since that's happened, we've gotten hacked. My lives, I'll start getting spammed a bunch of flight details. I guess I have a bunch of flights booked for me. I have a Tinder profile. I'm like, all of this stuff happened after they got a task force assigned to us. Just spam calls, you name it, a bunch of misinformation and lies flooding the internet ever since we got assigned a Canadian Food Inspection Agency social media task force.
Wow. Well, we've seen stuff like that. And the only thing I want to kind of correct about what Leighton was saying there is I don't think we're pre-totalitarianism. I think we're there.
You're stealing you're stealing what I was going to say, Jason.
Yeah, I want to remind everybody how
Yeah.
our prime minister got into power. Let's kind of rewind just a second, okay? He paid $350,000 into the race. He got rid of two opponents that were getting really popular. Rudy Dalla is one of them. And then they removed all the voters, like 170,000 Liberal voters got removed. And then suddenly he's the leader of the party. That's not democracy, right? Even right there, like how he became the leader of the party. Then we get into the election. There's some troubles around there. A lot of media against everybody except Carney, putting him up against this whole Trump elbow up thing. We don't have a democracy, Leighton. Sorry, I think we're already there. Nico, you want to touch on that?
I'm right there with you. I think if COVID proved something, the Freedom Convoy proves something, is that we're already there. It's just we're in the last stages where it's gonna be. We're about to hit a stage where it's gonna be too late. They're already starting to prep the digital ID. This to me is, there's a reason why they're removing the guns. There's a reason why C2, C8, C9, C63 are coming through. There's reasons why they go after farms like Katie's. They're prepping for the digital ID, and as soon as that's done, we're screwed, because it's Bill C2 that don't want transactions above $10,000. And John Carpe was saying, as soon as this is put in, there's nothing stopping them from putting that at $100. It's just an amendment. It's already in a bill, so it's already in law. You can't have more than 10,000. Whoop! Now it's 100. Now it's 0. So everything goes through the digital ID. Just look at what Starmer is starting to say in the UK. Oh, it's because of immigration. Hey, asshole! You created the problem to sell your solution. This is what's going on, and I agree with Jason. We're not on our way there. We're there. It's just a matter of, is it too late or not? To me, the digital ID is the turning point. If people sign up to this, we're screwed. Just look at what happened in Vietnam. It's not reported on, but 86 million people got debanked in Vietnam for not accepting a digital ID. They woke up a morning, boop, bank account are gone. Money gone. Why? Because they didn't take the ID. Same thing happened to a few million people in Thailand. So that's the breaking point. If that goes through, we are fucked.
Yeah.
Now, Katie, I do think you're correct. Like, this is the turning point. I don't want to overuse that word, but this is a turning point, because if this happens and the Supreme Court doesn't stand up and even hear out the evidence and the experts and make a just decision, I don't know how Canadians are going to respond. It's not with guns, I'll tell you that, because they tried to push that narrative in Ottawa as well, like the missing truck with 2,000 guns and all this kind of stuff. Like, that's not Canadians. But I don't know how Canadians will respond if we hear on Wednesday the leave application for leave is dismissed. And if you look through the list at the Supreme Court, a lot of them are dismissed. If it's the government that's the applicant, they sometimes hear it. But if it's not the government, it's rare that they hear it. So I'm praying for you. God kind of showed himself there when you got that stay. They were about to start calling. You guys are doing a prayer right there. We saw the live. And then boom, you got the call. The stay is in place. So I believe God's going to be trying to watch out for you on this one.
Yeah, I think so too. It was a beautiful moment, and it would just finish prayer. You're right. And then I got the call from Omar, and it was a beautiful moment, especially after just having, arrests and everything we went through. And it was just, the RCMP were in tears. I mean, we've had some beautiful moments. We've had Indigenous here, one that was really abused by the RCMP, and he's just a beautiful man, older man. And he went to the RCMP and he just said, "Today, I choose to forgive you for the ostriches." And he held an RCMP officer, and I have a beautiful picture of it. And they both cried. And I said, wow. This is God's work. This is what we're doing. We are bridging borders. We are bridging the gaps in the communication and the faith, and people are just coming together in a beautiful display of unity, hope, compassion, and passion for life. And these crazy-looking ostriches became the catalyst in this fight and leading the charge, because they're unique. And they just created a global discussion, and even the left of the left and the right of the right. There's just people that have been coming together, and then that whole elbows up and all of that stuff. Everything quickly fell away when we can talk about that these animals deserve the right to be tested to prove their health. And then everybody has fallen in love with the fact that we are what you see is what you get. There's been a lot of people that's tried to discredit us, and that's okay. But when you meet us, what you see is what you get. We're a very humble, hardworking family that wants to do something great for humanity. And these animals, we really believe in that that they can do that. And that we've met an amazing new family, and that is Dr. Pelech is part of that family. You guys are all stuck with us now too, so sorry. But along this journey, we've just met the most incredible people, and we're going to be there to protect them as well. And what this has shown in moments is that we don't need to wait for our government to make the changes that we deserve. The people, us, the people, we can protect one another. We can use our businesses, our voices, and we can use our platforms to create the change that we need as Canadians. So let's not wait for the government to do it. Let's try and reclaim our sovereignty as the Canadians that we are.
Bravo.
Yeah, we'll certainly use our platforms while we still can. And we'll be
Jason,
for that. Yeah, go
I
ahead,
just
Nico.
want to address one single comment because I would never. Sean Hodson is asking, "Are you not calling for violence?" And you're not calling for violence. I'm not.
No
I never
violence.
would.
No.
As
No
a
violence
Christian, I cannot, unless you put your hands on me, I can't call for violence. I will apply violence, but I will never call for it. What I'm saying, though, is we need to talk. I'm a conservative, and I talk to liberals every day. This is where we bridge the gap. Because this is not a political problem, because clearly Pierre Poilievre's not standing up for it, so it's not a political problem. This is a common sense problem. This is a problem of censorship. This is a problem of the Canada we grew up in. This is a problem of democracy. Does it still exist or not? So it's not political. It is just how we just need, as conservative, at least I'm talking for myself, I need to bridge the gap more with the left for the common sense lefties. I know it sounds weird. I know it sounds very strange to us to say a common sense lefty, but they exist. I know some. That's our responsibility. Violence, unfortunately, you can't out-violence the government. They have more guns than us. So we're not going to win that war. But there's a great book, Blueprint to a Revolution. If you guys want to read that book, make fun of your government. Bridge the gap with your political enemy and make fun of the government. Humor is one of the best ways to take down a government, and that's what we need to start doing.
Yeah, you're right. Actually,
Yeah, that's what they tried to do at Ottawa, is provoke violence, and it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly how we end up winning. We don't need violence for this one. They have all the guns, so it wouldn't work. Leighton, I'll come to you in a second. We've got about 10 minutes left. But Dr. Pelech, if you get the call and you got to provide some testimony to the Supreme Court, and they give you like 5 minutes, what's something that we would hear from you on that one?
Well, I think that I would stress that there's a great scientific opportunity here, that it's very unique, this flock that has not been called, and that in fact there's a lot of evidence that these birds themselves can offer a solution to the problem that we have with H5N1, and that I'm disturbed that a lot of the information that's been provided by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has been wildly speculative, not really backed by literature science. I mean, one of the last claims they made was that the virus from the Ostrich Farm was the most deadly virus tested on mice by the National Laboratory, Winnipeg Laboratory, Microbiology Laboratory. But having looked at the statement, I'm not even sure that they've even isolated this virus from these birds, and that what was being referred to was not the virus from the farm, but another virus, which was a pure D1.1 virus or 0.3 virus. So I'm thinking that even amongst the people in the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they're highly confused. And so this is extremely worrisome, and this is why we really need to go to court and to have the evidence presented and to have the judges look at that evidence and weigh it, which is not what has happened so far. The judges have taken essentially judicial notice, just as we've seen in many of the COVID-19 cases. And if they actually look at the evidence that's provided to them by me and other experts, then I think they would come to the realistic decision that these birds do not pose a threat. This is a tremendous waste of money and resources that could be better spent in other ways to protect Canadians.
I find in favor of the farm. Thank you very much for that testimony. That sounds great. Leighton, you wanted to have some final comments?
No, I was just gonna mention what Nico said about mockery. Mockery of government is actually one of the strategies that Hannah Arendt points to. And and of course, happens a lot. This is really the function of memes, and they are a great stress relief for those of us who are frustrated and frankly offended by the behavior of our governments and government bureaucrats. But I just have to note that I spent a lot of time in sort of the freedom community. It seems like 95% of the people in that community are Christians. So God bless you, Katie. Uh, but faith is really important during this time, and that's one of the things that, of course, is another aspect of Canadian society that's being targeted, isn't it?
Yes.
I really hope. I agree with you, Dr. Pelech. I'm really praying, literally praying, that these judges are going to actually look at evidence. But I've been in that situation so many times. In fact, I've had private conversations with Premier Smith where I've said, you've got statutes like the Interpretation Act and the Judicature Act, where you could actually proscribe the discretion of judges so that they could not take judicial notice of anything. They only have that because the government grants that to them statutorily. That could be removed. You could take away legislatively the whole concept of mootness. These two judicial tools they're just little tiny tools in the toolbox that were hardly ever used. But now, since 2020, judicial notice has just become a mammoth. And every case is, judges are saying, well, that question is moot. We could take away those things from judges, and we should. But I'm praying that they'll actually look at the evidence here. But it seems that, especially at the appellate level, these courts really don't want to deal with any type of legal situation that is at all controversial. They just want to bounce that basketball back into the hands of government, and we know what government is doing with it. And this is why these governments are behaving this way and with impunity. It's because constitutionally our courts are not functioning as they're intended to, and that is to be a check on government abuse and overreach. When government exceeds its legislative authority, the courts are supposed to be a check on that, and that hasn't been happening. And because it's not happening, we have situations like what's happening at Katie's Ostrich Farm.
And I don't want to mock you, Leighton, but it looks like you're missing a red hoop earring right now. But Katie, do you have any last comments for this audience of ours? And we're going to definitely be praying for you for the next few days for sure.
I just keep saying, please pray. Power of prayer has been a beautiful thing for the last 10 months. Our family has been put through the ringer. I have a paraplegic father at home at the same time. And we're a family that loves hard, but we fight harder. And they picked with the wrong farm. And whatever happens here, I see change. No matter what happens here, I believe that we've already began that change has already started. But I think that we have great opportunity with whatever happens here to do something really good with it. And I do hope that together with all the experts and the expertise of people like Dr. Pelech and even your panel and everybody that we've met along the way, I do hope that we can put together a collaborative effort to see that through. So God is good. God is good every day. And we're going to keep waking up, praying, and we're going to go to bed crying. Yeah, what can we do? Cry too. And praying. But I do see change. Yeah. So I really thank you for this time with all of your time on the panel. And I really thank you for the opportunity.
And to be clear, you do not have a Tinder profile.
No, I do not. Nope. But it still might be out there. Holy, do I have a lot of fake accounts now? Like I said, plane tickets bought for me on my phone. I was like, I guess some Canadian Food Inspection Agency is sending me somewhere.
Oh boy. Well, Nico, over the last 2 weeks, we've come a long way on this issue. We kind of just started to look into it, and now we've dug into it. What are your thoughts, Nico, after the last 2 weeks as we wrap up here over this issue?
You know, I've said it from the get-go. I really don't care what people think, what the real issue is. At the end of the day, the government is overreaching. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is just facts. How do you feel about that? That is all you need to ask yourself. Are they working for us? Or are they working for Big Pharma? Are they working for the WEF? Are they working for people that weren't elected? This is the only question, because I can have all the opinions in the world, but at the end of the day, I'm a fact-driven guy, and the facts are pointing to outside sources that we didn't elect, we didn't vote for, we did not choose in any way, shape, or form. They're controlling us, and if you're capable of stepping back and looking at the censorship bill that are coming, the gun grab that are coming, what's happening to you, Katie, is just, unfortunately for you, and I'm sorry to say it that way, I don't want to be an ass when I say that, but you're just one of the many problems that we're seeing. But don't think that they're all siloed. We've become so over-specialized on everything that we're not capable of just stepping back and seeing that all those silos are all connected, and they're all controlled by people at the top. So you're just part of the cog. The gun grab is part of it. Censorship is part of it. But we need to stop seeing them as silos, and we need to start working together and have more conversations like we're having right now. But like I said, and I say this all the time, reach out. How did you say it? Hug a liberal, Jason?
Yeah.
As a guy that's given 4,000 or 5,000 free hugs during the convoy, during all the protests in Quebec and Ontario, during COVID, I agree, hug a liberal, because that's how we win it. We need to stop seeing it left versus right and start seeing it top versus bottom, and everything we're seeing is all intertwined. There's no coincidence. But one thing we have that they don't is faith, and we need to rely on faith day in
Amen.
and day out.
Amen. Yeah.
100%. And we just want to kind of close with WHO plus WEF equals WTF. Like what's really going on here. And maybe we should say hug an ostrich, but don't sneak up on them, because he can hurt you.
I think they're pretty fast too, aren't they?
Right now you'll get taken down by all the cops.
Yeah.
Well, they got all those drones up there. So anyways, I'd like to thank our audience, CSIS, RCMP, CFIA. Welcome to the show. And everybody, thank you very much for joining us. Katie, I'm really touched by everything you shared with us, especially about Spirit. I'm so disappointed that we had to witness that. But it was a hen, so she won't be forgotten.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pelech. I really hope that you get on that record for the Supreme Court. Leighton, thanks a lot for bringing faith, bringing your book, and bringing your perspective to this episode. And Nico, I think we're doing something good here. And while we can, we got to keep doing this show. So thanks a lot, brother. I love you a lot.
Amen.
And to our audience, make sure you subscribe, like, and do all that good stuff. And share this, because these are the shows that people need to hear. Lawyer, doctor, the owner, and then a couple knuckleheads who are trying to bring out the media to you all. Love you all very much, and God bless.